good afternoon. Keith Tebow from FRC Media. Thank you for joining us. FRC Media is preparing for the 2022 state election. We're trying to speak to as many candidates as possible to give you the opportunity to make informed choices at the ballot box. Today, we're going to speak on the race for Secretary of State. I'm pleased to be joined by Rayla Campbell. She is the Republican candidate running for Secretary of State. Rayla, thank you for joining us. Welcome to Fall River. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be down here.
You know, one of the things that in doing these interviews with candidates, unless the candidate is from a particular location, like here in the South Coast, a lot of people may not know who Rayla Campbell is. So my first question to you is, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for Secretary of State.
Well, I am a homegrown body, so I was born in Boston, raised in Scituate. So like Fall River, I come from a fishing town and right on the ocean. And I grew up humble beginnings, you know, low income, Section 8 housing, went to public school and just decided I wanted to get out and work. And that's what I did. You know, I started working right in high school and then moved on to getting my own apartment and working in the city of Boston and working for insurance. So it was just an everyday, let's make ends meet. I like to go out, hang out with my friends a lot. So politics really wasn't on my radar until I had children. And then me and my husband, we had our first daughter, and I wanted to be involved in everything that she had, everything that came to her education, because I knew how important education was and what it done for me. So when I got involved and started seeing what was going on, I was shocked and appalled. My daughter, my oldest one, is 12, and I also have a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old son. So that has been, in its own, a very busy life running for office. But when I saw what they were teaching and how they were trying to sow division, again, within the home, because my kids are mixed, and a lot of families throughout Massachusetts are mixed. This is where everything began, right here. And they were destroying what it means to be a patriot from Massachusetts and our history and where it all started. Me coming from one of the oldest towns in the state, I thought it was really important to make sure that we're protecting our history and our children should be learning it. And then I decided to run for Congress. And when I ran, it was during the height of COVID.
Right, 2020.
Yes, and I ran against Ayanna Pressley because she was spreading a lot of hate in my town, and I did not like that. And I was like, we have to push back. And she was going to run unopposed, as so many Democrats do in this state. So I thought it was really important to, one, fight for my state and the country that I love, and then also make sure that we're not allowing the Democrats to have one-party rule in this state, which we have for so long. And I've always been a Republican, so I've always been that unicorn, as they call me. But it's really important that we get up there and fight. And then the Secretary of State, Galvin, broke the law and violated my constitutional rights to keep me off the ballot in 2020. And he did that by breaking the law, which was lowered by Governor Baker to 1,000 signatures in order to qualify to be on the November ballot. And I ran as a write-in, and I got 1,200, which is clearly over 1,000. We were later to find 8,500 also ballots that we are not able to see in the Boston Elections Commission. So we do a lawsuit against them. But we had the number, and he said they had an opinion of the law. Now, the law's in black and white, and it states it right there on the website that I was only required to get the same number on the nomination process on the primary, in which I did. So that's why I decided, you know, it's time to go after him. He's been in there for too long.
Yeah, so, you know, what you just said, some people may look at as personal vendetta, right? But there's issues in the campaign as well. So when, you know, Secretary Galvin aside, what is it about the Secretary of State's office that you feel you can do? And we'll get into some of the specifics, but in general, you can do a better job at.
Well, look at our elections. When we're seeing, and I look at personally what happened to me, we realized that it didn't matter who was actually going out there and voting, it mattered who was counting the votes. Why was it that almost every single Republican lost by the same exact margin? It was unheard of. And then when we're asking for recounts, we're not allowed to be in the room, and our people were being pushed out as well when it came to watching. When the polls closed and we had our poll watchers, they were told they have to be outside the room or they have to be completely outside the building, and they'll give them the numbers. If there's nothing to hide, then why is there so much corruption that we see and so many complaints? It happened to me personally on election day with the people that were working the polls, telling anybody who came in, and a bunch of people called and complained, how to put the stickers on the ballot and then not to fill in the bubble and to write below the line, which is voter interference. So if they're saying that they're not trained, obviously there's problems within the Secretary of State's office. And we shouldn't be using these machines to do a simple job of counting bubbles. They should be hand counted. We should be voting by paper. We should be voting in person on election day, not month, and showing an ID. You have to verify who you are in order to cast your ballot. We just know that the process they've had in place for so long is not working. And then also when we look at the freedom of information, FOIA requests, and we see that what is going on in our schools, and parents are being shut down, they're not given the information. Then when they request the information, they're labeled and targeted, and they think they have nowhere to go. Well, the Secretary of State's office is oversight of FOIA requests, and it's really important that people know that they can reach out and make sure that this information, this public information that does not go against the law, is provided to the people. Again, if there's nothing to hide, why are you pushing back so hard and hiding stuff?
I want to spend some time on those issues independently, and then also talk a little bit about business regulation, which also falls under the purview of the Secretary of State. When it comes to elections, some of the ideas that you'd like to implement, again, it's a Republican-Democrat thing. Obviously, the Democrats, as you said, have been in office for quite a long time, specifically in the legislature. Obviously, you've had governors be of a Republican in different parties. How do you break that mold? Because any changes you want to make would have to go through a legislative process.
Yes, well, we also need to be looking at what's going on right now in the laws that we have on the books, and if they violate our Constitution, the Massachusetts Constitution, not the national Constitution. And I believe there are a lot of laws that they're putting forth, like mail-in ballots, that do violate our Constitution and violate the laws of the state. And we need to be making sure we're protecting that. Now, we should not be allowing same-day registration, same-day voting without providing proof of who you are and that you're a legal citizen to vote in this country and a legal resident of Massachusetts. And now we have, as you've seen, they've just passed a law that would allow illegals, people that are not even legal to be here, to get a driver's license. And a lot of people don't know that 2 years ago, they passed a law that automatically enrolls you to vote when you get your driver's license. Automatically opts you in. You have to check the box to opt out.
But under the this law that allows undocumented individuals to get a license, voting is not part of that.
It automatically registers you to vote.
But I was
when
under
you
the
get a
impression
driver's
that this part of the law, these undocumented individuals are not allowed to vote.
And so they're going to have to change the law. How is that even going to work? Because when you're issued a driver's license, it's an automatic thing that happens. You have to now opt out. Right. So again, they are opting people into stuff without clearly telling them any information, when it should be an opt-out. You should be you want to opt in instead of having to opt out, because you're already opted in. And it shouldn't be that way.
So it should be the individual should have the ability to opt in, not automatically be opt-in.
Yes, it is your civic duty to register to vote. And we have seen the problems with when you get your new license, that your party is being switched. Now, why is that? You've registered to vote through your town. Why is the Registry of Motor Vehicles doing anything when it comes to elections? That is under the guidance of the Secretary of State and should stay there. So should we take over the RMV? Maybe we should. Maybe they need way more oversight and to make sure that we're protecting the rights of these citizens of Massachusetts. And we know and we have seen what the Registry of Motor Vehicles is capable of if you look at what Brockton and having indictments.
So the legislature this year passed the Votes Act, which allows for mail ballots and allows for extended and early voting. Would you try to repeal those?
Absolutely, because we have absentee balloting, which we've had in place for a long time, checks and balances for that. But with mail-in ballots, these mail-in ballots are going out to everybody on the taxpayer's dime, requested or not requested. And this should not be happening because,
the
again,
application.
But people are getting ballots, and I have gotten some myself with applications that do not belong to anybody in my household. And not only that, it does have your birth date right there on it and the party that you're affiliated with right there on it. Easy way of fraud and to steal identity. All they need is your name and your birth date to steal your identity. Not to mention, when your ballot leaves your hand, it should be going directly into the box in front of a clerk and an officer that is watching. This is going into the mail. And how do we know it's going to get to that destination when we see that our men and women who serve overseas don't even get their absentee ballots in times? And that is done for a long time to make sure that those conservative votes are not counted.
So let me ask you, in terms of early voting, mail ballots, it appears that the Republican Party is generally opposed to that. But wouldn't early voting, mail ballot, there is no same-day voter registration in Massachusetts, but even extending voter registration, wouldn't that also benefit Republicans? Wouldn't it benefit any voter, regardless of their party?
I think it actually would not, because a lot of people, I've got plenty of time. I can go whenever. No, we want people to be engaged, to be actually focused on the issues that affect them directly in their communities. And that's why you should be going on election day. And we can even make it a holiday so that there's no problem with you not being able to get there. We need to increase voter turnout, but there also needs to be an even balance when it comes to the media that covers both sides fairly and nonpartisan. We are watching a completely partisan media happen throughout the entire country ever since former President Donald Trump was elected into office. It became a target. So anybody who's a Republican, we're super MAGA, we're ultra MAGA, we're Trumpers. They don't even think that we can have our own thoughts and values, and we just love and cherish this country. We don't see the skin colors. We see red, white, and blue, and that's what's most important.
I do want to shift gears. We can do a whole show on voting, I know. But I do want to shift gears to other responsibilities within the Secretary of State's office. One is business regulation. Anyone that wants to open a business in Massachusetts has to do so from the Secretary of State's office. Do you feel that currently there's more restrictions to maybe starting a business than there should be, and how would you change that?
I definitely do think that there's way more restrictions. I think it's harder for a small business to start up, especially here in Massachusetts, when you have big tech, when you have big pharma, when you have all of these super entities, and they come from Massachusetts, especially with our colleges. And we want to be more welcoming. So why are the fees going up so much? I would like to see what's going, of course, the whole Secretary of State's office needs an audit. And I would like to see why these fees are going up, because people can't even start a business, or it takes them years and years. There's over-regulations like you wouldn't believe, and we see that in our fishing as well. But when we're looking at the fees, they just increase them again. And it's also not just when it comes with businesses, it comes to homeowners, and when you're purchasing your house and you're registering anything, when you have to register through the Secretary of State. the fees are out of control and they're so expensive, and then the penalties, and they make it very difficult for businesses having to send things here, send things there, go all to different offices, and it should be one central location that you send everything in. So when they're late, which a lot of businesses are, because they have sent it to the wrong area, which they thought they were, because it's very hard to navigate through the Secretary of State's website in order to start your business. That also needs to be fixed as well. And I love fixing websites and streamlining
you did bring that. I was going to
things.
bring that up. That you do mention in your platform about the website being
Yes,
it needs to be fixed.
It needs to be fixed because that's what's hurting businesses trying to navigate through.
For many people looking to start a business, that may be their first point of contact, right?
Yes.
To go to the Secretary of State's office.
Well, that's where you got to register.
Right, and if the information is not clear or ambiguous, that's a problem.
That's the start. You have to get your number. You have to get a TIN number, or if you're starting a small business or if you're starting a nonprofit, you have to go and first thing you do is you have to register through the Secretary of State's website. And then people are like, well, what do I do next? And then you're trying to navigate around. And it's very difficult, and a lot of people don't have all these super lawyers that can help them navigate through the website. So it needs to be fixed in order to help the small businesses and the nonprofits that are getting up and running in Massachusetts. And then also looking at why the fees are so astronomically high and why the penalties for simple mistakes are through the roof for some businesses, but not for them all.
So do you have an idea as to what type of changes you would make? And you talk about fees, but you also talk about there's a lot of red tape, right?
Yeah.
And you said a lot of stops along the way. So do you have any ideas on how you would do some streamlining?
Well, I have lots of ideas.
Okay. Ideas come easy, right?
They do, but first thing we need to do is to have an audit so we can see what is going on. And when you're new coming into something, you need to see what's going on throughout the whole company, throughout the whole corporation. And we not only have Boston, we also have Springfield. And then, the state goes past there. We have Western Mass and Pittsfield, and they also need access, just like the Cape as well. And we do have pilot offices in small locations. But it's to make sure that we do a full audit to see what is going on, where all this red tape, and cut the fat. We've really got a lot of fat that is harming people. And when people don't have to go through so much red tape in order to start their business, because it's really unnecessary, it's just a way to squeeze more money out of people, we need to be making sure we're fixing that problem.
Yeah. I want to shift gears now to the Secretary of State's office is the holder of public records.
Yes.
You talked a little bit about being a little more transparent and freedom of information request. I guess talk a little bit about what you see as the problem in that area now and things you would like to change.
Well, we get blocked a lot. So when you're requesting information that has to do with anybody that they don't want information released on, which is it's public information, you get blocked. And that usually starts at the local level. And then when you appeal to the Secretary of State's office, there's a certain time period that they have to get back to. And then when that doesn't happen and you send another request and another request and another request and it goes unanswered, you're wondering what is going on and why aren't they responding? Is there something else that they need to cover up? And we're seeing that when it comes to our schools. And when it comes to parents and requesting this information. And I've come across so many parents that had no idea that they could appeal to the Secretary of State's office. And we do have keep a chain of custody by sending emails. Right. So I want to make sure that when a request comes in, that it is followed up on immediately. Because why are you hiding information, public information, from the public, especially if it is harming people? The information needs to get to the people so they can know what legalities they have to make sure that what is happening doesn't happen to anybody else and if there's prosecution needed. And I'll also be working really, really, really close with our soon-to-be Attorney General, because I'll be the first Madam Secretary, and then Jay McMahon will be your Attorney General, and we'll work really close together to make sure that we are protecting the people, protecting the laws, and making sure that the information that is supposed to be provided to the public is there.
One of the things that I think is sort of important to note is that myself as a journalist, we have avenues on how to get the information, but it's just letting the general public know how to access information that is not just a Massachusetts problem, it's a problem probably across the country and nationally. Just getting that knowledge. So how would you, I guess, educate people better to say, hey, listen, this information is yours, here's how to get it?
And that's exactly what I've been doing right now when I've been going out and campaigning, because a lot of people just think, oh, it's just elections, Secretary of State's office, just elections. But educating people in what the office does and how to navigate right now through their terrible website and what their avenues and what they can do. I want to make sure that the information is constantly given out to people and given to our public libraries, so that they know when there are new bills that are put up on for Beacon Hill, people should know what they are. They should know how they're going to affect each community, because the laws that they make affect the entire state, not just one area as they seem to think that it does. And people need to know what's going on so they can actually go and voice their opinions and participate in their civic responsibilities and knowing what is going on in the community. And
is it a little more difficult to educate people in a city like Fall River, a gateway city? You're from Boston, so you understand that's obviously the largest city in the Commonwealth, but gateway cities as well, where the educational attainment is not as high. Is that another barrier that you'd hope to overcome?
Well, I also think that we should not be penalizing the people and the children that are going to school when we have educators that are come from a state that has incredible education system. So why is it that they are harming certain areas with not providing the proper education? And I would definitely advocate for fixing our education system and making more choice. I am completely for school choice. I'm also for having the money follow your child, as they have done in New Hampshire, because that would, one, it would loosen the burden on our public schools, but then it would bring in more competition. And children can thrive if they're giving the proper education. Our education system right now needs a complete overhaul. The left always talks about defunding the police. It's time that we defund the teachers' union, because that is the problem when we see in certain areas. And when you talk to people, they're not as dumb as everybody wants to put them out to be. They're actually quite educated, but nobody ever reaches out and talks.
Yeah. As we wrap up, I just want to give you the last word. So the voters of Fall River will consider you in November for Secretary of State. What would you like to tell them in terms of any last remarks?
I would like to tell them thank you so much for having me. We're going to be doing a lot of events down here in Fall River and throughout the state. If you could follow me on my Facebook page, it's Rayla Campbell for Massachusetts, and also visit my website. It's rayla4ma.com. That's RAYLAFORMA.com. You can follow all of our links through my website, and I also have a radio show every Thursday in Nashua, which I stream on my Facebook page. And if you are in the upper part of the state, you can get it as well. It's WSMN 1590 AM, 95.3 FM, WSMN.live, and on my Facebook page. Thank you guys so much for having me, and it was a pleasure to be on.
Well, welcome to Fall River again, Rayla. Thank you for coming here, and all the best in the election in November.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us today on FRC Media. Please make a point to vote on Election Day.